Something unmistakable hovers on the threshold, pressing in with the certainty of sunrise after a long, uncertain night. The illusion of endless choice has evaporated. There's no bypass left, no path around the edge. The arrival is silent, but absolute. In the quiet between what was and what must be, existence arranges a silent invitation, one that cannot be postponed, one that waits for no signature. Tomorrow's moon is not simply a phase passing through, it becomes the pivot on which possibility spins. Readiness is irrelevant. Movement is inevitable. Suddenly, the landscape rearranges itself, revealing an entrance hidden in plain sight, and everything before it quietly loses its grip. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to hit the subscribe button before you go. Your presence here matters, and it's what keeps this community growing. Stay tuned for more insights, and if you feel called, share your thoughts in the comments. Take care, and see you in the next one. Some claim the mounting tension is merely the residue of modern anxieties, but beneath the surface, another story pulses. Deep within, there's a sensation, an unspoken urgency that rattles the foundations, the kind of alert that cannot be ignored or explained away. It's as if the inner compass throws its own anchor, forcing a pause, demanding full participation. Those who have tracked this quiet summons, have any noticed the patterns in their own dreams, the subtle shifts in memory, the way familiar spaces seem charged with new electricity? The first stretch of this lunar interval is saturated with meaning, a kind of silent catalyst hidden in the ordinary. If attention wavers, a rare opportunity vanishes. What exactly is it that makes a single span of hours outweigh an entire year? The mind will circle this question, but the answer lives somewhere past analysis, in the trembling space where insight takes root. This turning is more than dramatic flourish, its consequences unfold with a sense of finality that resists reversal. The coming day acts as both invitation and verdict. An unseen gate closes, quietly, yet with conviction. Those who find themselves on one side will carry forward the echo of change, those on the other, the hollow thud of doors not opened. Existence draws its own boundary, a quiet division, subtle but unmistakable, etched in the ordinary flow of time. After the pivot, all attempts to revisit the threshold meet only with silence. Isn't it strange how every era has its invisible crossroads, and only in looking back does anyone realize the precise moment when tomorrow became something else entirely? On certain nights, the sky does more than reflect sunlight, it quietly marks a juncture etched deep within the fabric of existence. This particular lunar phase doesn't just illuminate, it acts as a kind of checkpoint, an embedded signal meant to be encountered, not just observed. Missing it doesn't simply postpone progress. Instead, a sensation of life on repeat begins to echo, where familiar glitches play out over and over again, as if time itself is caught in a repeating chord. This evening doesn't arbitrate fairly, it sorts out who returns to old cycles and who finds a way beyond them. Strangely, most will wander through the night without registering any shift, almost as if a hidden song played just out of earshot. But for the rare few who sense the subtle tension in the air, a rare kind of transformation becomes possible, like stepping outside the static and tuning into a new, wider resonance. There's a layer to this night that rarely gets discussed. Sometimes, what appears as tranquility is really an unseen assessment. The surface might offer calm, as if the world collectively exhales, but beneath that calm is a pulse, a diagnostic force, scanning for awareness in the midst of comfort. It's a test that wears the costume of serenity. Most, lost in routine, will keep moving as always, scrolling, venting, drifting into habitual patterns, never realizing that unseen hooks are guiding their reactions. This night is saturated with subtle provocations. Disagreements flare, emotions surge, and enticing chances arise that later reveal themselves as cleverly disguised choices with unseen consequences. The entire environment becomes a kind of organized unpredictability, exposing where harmony and discord reside. Energy, indifferent to explanations, simply reflects what is offered. Unseen habits surface, blame is assigned, unease grows, and signals are misread. Yet for those attentive enough to notice the shift, an opportunity emerges. Instead of recoiling from friction, they recognize it as a subtle mechanism, a recalibration at work, not an assault. For such observers, this phase is more than just an event. It's the ignition point for a new path, revealed only under pressure. The disturbances aren't meant to derail, but to propel forward, functioning like invitations wrapped in complexity. When discomfort intensifies, it's actually a sign that the correct channel has been found. Enduring this turbulence reveals new clarity, and looking back, it becomes hard to remember a time when the way forward felt truly out of reach. In rare moments, awareness is met by an unexpected imprint, an idea, an image, or a certainty that seems to land out of nowhere. This upcoming lunar cycle isn't just a celestial event, it's an unseen dispatch coded with specificity. Without warning, clarity might arrive mid-errand, half-dreaming, or caught in the rhythm of routine. What arrives isn't some fleeting spark of creativity, but a directive, a distinct impression meant to reroute the coming chapter. There's no rerun if it's missed. Absorbed in distractions or emotional static, the transmission fades before it ever finds ground, leaving no evidence behind except a sense that something almost happened. Sometimes, these arrivals cut through with the force of a revelation, a realization about a connection, a turn life needs to take, an old chapter ready for closure, or an idea that had always hovered just out of reach. It is never soft-edged. It lands abruptly, a silent exclamation in the midst of inner chatter. For those able to notice, there's an art to receiving. Capture it on paper, say it aloud, make it tangible. Such moments are more than fleeting inspiration. They're functional, transformative, and designed to set new coordinates for the future. And curiously, when acted upon, everything in the external world begins to bend and align with this new direction, as if reality itself readjusts in response. That's why stillness and attention aren't optional right now. They're the only way to intercept what's arriving. This isn't about adopting spiritual postures or chasing mystical highs. It's about remaining lucid enough to spot the answer when it lands, perhaps for the only time all year. When the signal finally makes contact, there's no mistaking it. Suddenly, the fractured sense of direction clicks into place, and old doubts lose their grip. There may be a sense lately that things are fragmenting, emotionally, intellectually, maybe even in the body. People seem off, plans dissolve, and uncertainty creeps in like a tide. But this isn't the unraveling of self. It's the slow shedding of everything inauthentic, the old scaffolding crumbling so something more aligned can emerge from beneath the debris. Have you ever wondered if all that breaking apart is just the cost of finally being able to see what was always meant to be received? Rarely does the sky offer solace without demand. This lunar turning arrives not as a blanket, but as a wind that strips away every brittle layer accumulated through habit or fear. The turbulence that's been rattling the ordinary isn't a punishment, but the dismantling of scaffolds built for a life that no longer fits. When perception blurs, it's easy to mistake the collapse for failure, as if everything is falling apart beyond repair. But with clear eyes, there's a certain refinement within the disorder, a strange artistry in what appears to be unraveling. What seems like endings are simply the shattering of what's obsolete. It's only through this kind of elegant undoing that what's necessary for the next stage is revealed. Watch as old acquaintances drift, outdated ambitions turn sour, and once cherished dreams suddenly lose their glow. This isn't a step backward. This is the long-awaited settling of bones into alignment. The body bristles, the mind races for solutions, and every instinct calls for retreat. But comfort isn't the purpose of this night, it's transformation. This moment acts as a tremor, a sudden shift that cracks open what's false so the genuine can emerge. There's no warning, the foundation simply shakes, and what isn't rooted is released. Rather than resisting, let the fragments scatter. The sense of ruin is just the first glimpse of a new direction taking shape beneath the rubble. Has it ever occurred to anyone that panic in times like this isn't the problem, but the proof that something deeper is being made possible? In the hours ahead, the air will shimmer with a kind of silent voltage, and the most charged interval of the year opens wide. Precisely 8 hours, beginning at the peak of lunar brilliance. This is no poetic flourish, it's a window where resonance between body and planet hums in uncanny harmony, amplifying whatever stirs in the mind. Intentions, fears, half-formed desires, all of them are broadcast, multiplied, etched into the next season of experience. Many will sleepwalk through it, numbing out, missing the gravity of the moment as they program their own futures with idle static. Yet, for those attuned, there is a hidden mechanism, a rare ability to reroute destiny, if only for a brief span. In this exact interval, a different intelligence can surface, making way for insights to land deeper, for visions to sink into the roots. These are not hours for hesitation. Doubt has no place in the signal. This is the moment for absolute presence, where intention imprints directly into the field of possibility. 8 hours, nothing more. As the threshold closes, the feedback becomes stark, every old pattern reflected back with undeniable clarity, every longing and avoidance magnified. The exposure might sting, might overwhelm, but it will never lie. What's grasped in this stretch draws everything closer, what's ignored will quietly echo back as regret. Perhaps the real question is, when the universe finally offers its full attention, what truly deserves to be said? Once the heightened window has passed, what follows operates like a silent referendum on everything just experienced. The patterns presumed to be finished often circle back for an encore, arriving not as exhausted relics but revitalized, wearing new faces. Paths once thought closed are animated again, not to be reclaimed, but to test the depth of recent evolution. What once drained vitality, what once tempted with hollow rewards, resurfaces with persuasive charm. The appearance of choice is an illusion, beneath it lies a subtle examination. Is the cycle truly over, or simply dormant? This returning current isn't random, it's a kind of energetic contract. It weaves old scenarios in alluring disguises, never flaunting obvious faults, but instead gleaming with fresh appeal. That's the challenge. The repetition is a trap woven from unfinished business, pretending to offer closure. Rather than restoring or refreshing what once was, these recurrences serve a different function, to see if the past can be released completely. Watch closely. What re-emerges in these days is not seeking reconciliation, but resolution. Whether it's a familiar face extending a hand, an opportunity that promises easy gain, or habits long buried suddenly glowing with false promise, all are invitations to revisit what has already been outgrown. The true danger lies in re-engagement, a quiet signature on a contract that only binds further to what must be left behind. To re-enter these familiar cycles out of longing, unease, or faded nostalgia isn't to heal, it's to be drawn backward. This moment offers a rare clarity to step out of the echo. Old energies return in full volume as they exit, their swan song demanding attention. It's essential not to indulge the call of what was, even if it arrives in the gentlest form. These are the crossroads that shape the next passage. Every small interaction, thoughts, words, or silent agreements, carries the momentum of what will unfold next. Tomorrow isn't a routine turning of the page, it's a binding of intentions, a notary for the spirit. Each response is inscribed with lasting consequences, sometimes subtle, sometimes profound. What's affirmed or denied now reverberates through unseen corridors of time. Agreement with old patterns invites them back for another season. Courageous refusals, though uncomfortable, clear the way for a broader horizon. Even the smallest acts, answering a message out of habit, accepting an offer out of resignation, can unwittingly seal old stories back into the fabric of coming months. Precision becomes an act of devotion to self, not paranoia. The lunar glow doesn't just light a path, it archives every step taken beneath it. Timelines are reinforced, futures are sculpted by stray thoughts and fleeting exchanges. This is where potential solidifies, not in grand declarations, but in what is permitted, even passively. Consider, in those quiet hours, the silent contracts that are forming. What agreements are being made, what alignments are set, sometimes without a word. Many will drift, unaware of the magnitude of their choices, only to question their path in retrospect. But awareness brings agency, and intention becomes a kind of promise to a future self. In the hush after the window closes, the life that emerges will be the echo of choices made in this luminous pause. Sometimes the environment doesn't rise at the same pace as individual transformation. Under this full moon, intensity doesn't just refine what's inside, it highlights hidden weak points in every structure, within and around. As layers fall away and expansion happens in the background, the air thickens with a kind of electric unease. Not everyone nearby is prepared to match the new signal. Suddenly, strange echoes appear, messages from long-lost contacts, misunderstandings that flare up for no clear reason, invitations from old friends whose motives feel subtly draining. This isn't random drama, it's a reaction to shifting frequencies. The closer clarity comes, the more that surrounding energy tries to recalibrate itself, and sometimes that recalibration looks a lot like resistance. Ever notice how change in one person can ripple through a whole circle, shaking loose hidden tensions? When inner landscapes begin to settle into coherence, the world outside sometimes seems to fall into disarray. What looks like distance from others is often just a refusal to keep orbiting old patterns of disorder. Discomfort hates being ignored and will dress up in new disguises. Urgent requests for help, emotional outbursts wearing the mask of honesty, or conversations that begin gently and end up draining all focus. The real task is to remain centered, not frozen. True connection doesn't demand constant repair work on every relationship. It's about tending to the space where clarity thrives, sometimes even clearing out digital clutter or pausing before answering calls that never seem to arrive at peace. How often do small boundaries make all the difference in the quality of daily life? No cosmic alignment is inviting a rescue mission. Instead, this moment asks for sustained resonance even as outer events stutter and glitch. Those unable to steady themselves may unconsciously try to redirect that turbulence outward. This is the crossroads: take the bait, or stay committed to the new signal. The subtler obstacles are rarely dramatic. Just before the highest charge lands, resistance will slip in disguised as comfort, a gentle pull to rest a bit longer, scroll aimlessly, or postpone intentional rituals. There's nothing loud or obvious about this fog. Its power lies in its softness, the way it convinces the mind that waiting a few more minutes is harmless. And yet, it's often this gentle haze, not any major storm, that causes the most profound detours on the journey to realignment. When have the smallest comforts ever led to the deepest breakthroughs? Rarely does interference announce itself with fanfare. Instead, it arrives dressed in rationality, whispering subtle justifications that sound perfectly sensible. There is no alarm, no sign of inner collapse, just a faint mist drifting in at the threshold of clarity. The nearer one approaches a true breakthrough, the more inviting ordinary comfort appears. Suddenly, the mind crafts gentle excuses. Maybe later, perhaps after a little rest, or tomorrow might hold the real magic after all. Each of these choices, though barely noticed, creates the underlying script for the coming shift. They are the quiet architects shaping how the doorway to transformation is crossed, whether with intention or with distraction. Every turning point carries its own architecture. Momentum gathers behind whatever direction is already being chosen, whether that's full engagement or cautious avoidance. The pull of old habits becomes magnetic under these conditions, and the energy seated now will linger long after the celestial event has passed. The diversions that present themselves will rarely be dramatic. Instead, they might appear as gentle nudges, a sudden text from a faded acquaintance, an urge to revisit a memory that has already served its purpose, or the soft comfort of a familiar routine. None of it feels threatening. It all feels like a return to balance. But isn't it curious how what seems like tranquility can actually be inertia, and how easy it is to confuse gentleness with delay? Inevitably, there comes a moment of wondering why a long-awaited shift never seemed to materialize. But the truth is, the change did arrive, it simply wasn't met with readiness. This isn't a time for drifting through the day or letting half attention guide the course. Each action, especially in those first luminous hours, shapes the framework of what follows. Energy spent becomes the template for months to come, and the cycle of the moon will not pause for late arrivals. If attention is scattered or dulled, that's the current that will be carried forward. This is the reason presence is so essential. Not because missing a sign is a failure, but because every distraction is perfectly timed to test whether comfort will be chosen over realignment. Have you ever noticed how, right at the threshold of something important, the softest voice can be the most convincing? Sometimes what poses as relief is really just a lull, a familiar detour offering nothing in return except more waiting. It's easy to miss how often intention is postponed for later, when the core of self is asking for action now. This isn't a call for harsh self-judgment or rigid discipline, but a quiet invitation to be radically honest about where energy is being spent. Every day marks a threshold. Either momentum is quietly built, or inertia settles in. Celestial cycles respond not to plans or promises, but to actual steps taken. Often the most important moment doesn't thunder in. It arrives quietly, shifts the landscape, and afterward nothing looks quite the same. How many times has a subtle realization changed the entire course of a day? As this lunar phase settles over everything, perception subtly sharpens. It's not a conscious shift, but the result of hundreds of small choices, each pause, each leap, every reconsideration and reset, gradually polishing the lens of awareness. Then, in a single breath, what once felt clouded snaps into sharp focus. The old confusion doesn't dissolve in spectacle, it simply ceases to exist. Suddenly, the draining job, the relationship that never fits, the pursuit that only leads in circles, all become unmistakably visible. Analysis is no longer required. The mind just recognizes what's been quietly signaling for attention all along. Sometimes clarity isn't a discovery, but a long-awaited recognition of the obvious, surfacing from beneath the noise of daily life. This lunar passage doesn't deliver answers from the outside world. Instead, it hones what's been quietly flickering in the background of consciousness. What emerges now isn't some dazzling revelation, it's a long overdue recognition. Personal truth doesn't crash through the door, it stirs awake after a long dormancy, speaking softly through the fabric of daily routines. Its greatest strength is subtlety. In the middle of an unremarkable moment, an inner lever flips. A simple gesture, a casual remark, and suddenly the inner compass shifts direction. Perhaps it's a pause in conversation that urges a step away, or the gaze in the mirror that brings the realization. Some part of self has been covering up a deeper longing. This isn't the imagination playing tricks, it's the truest self quietly confronting what the surface has tried to conceal. Such clarity rarely arrives with sweetness. At times, the sharpness of seeing plainly can sting, for truth strips away excuses and exposes what's been tolerated far too long. There's a certain liberation in that discomfort. Pain, when finally named, turns from burden to catalyst. This moon acts as a call to psychic adulthood. The focus shifts away from fleeting pleasure toward a more enduring alignment, choosing what genuinely fits, what nourishes growth, and what allows for real expansion. Everything else, anything less, quickly becomes intolerable. Sometimes, that's the real gift, the inability to settle for less than what serves the soul's unfolding. Sometimes a vague sense of discomfort appears, unaccompanied by explanation. An ordinary interaction, an old habit, or a familiar face can suddenly lose its warmth, as if a subtle current has shifted direction. It's easy to question whether this instinct is rational, but that's the very pulse of truth waking up beneath the surface. Letting go of a long-standing role or saying farewell to a chapter isn't a sign of confusion, it's the mind aligning with reality as it is. Trust in this quiet knowing seems to act like a compass, speeding the transition from stale routine to renewed direction. Of course, clarity comes at a price. But maintaining old illusions extracts an even steeper toll over time. What this lunar phase offers isn't just the unveiling of truth, it's an open dare to step into it fully. After crossing this threshold, returning to what once felt safe simply isn't possible.